Picture this. It's 1907. You are dying of tuberculosis in a Massachusetts hospital. You're weak, you can barely breathe, and the last thing you need is your doctor sliding you, bed and all, onto a giant industrial scale. And yet, that is exactly what happened to 6 people. Because one doctor, one very determined, very unhinged doctor, was convinced that if he could just catch the precise moment of death, he could weigh the human soul. 21 grams. That's what he claimed it weighed. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally on a scale in pounds and ounces. His name was Dr. Duncan MacDougall, and what he did next got him published by the American Society for Psychical Research, plastered across newspapers worldwide, and endlessly debated for over 100 years. This is that story. Duncan MacDougall was not some fringe lunatic scribbling in a basement. He was a respected physician from Haverhill, Massachusetts, a real doctor with real patients, a real office, and apparently a very flexible sense of medical ethics. He was also deeply religious, and like a lot of people at the turn of the 20th century, he was wrestling with a very specific question in the emerging field of psychical research. If the soul is real, and he absolutely believed it was, then it must exist somewhere. It must have some kind of physical presence. And if it has physical presence, it has mass. Now, most people hear that and think, okay, interesting idea, moving on. MacDougall heard that and thought, I should build a giant bed scale and start weighing the dying. His logic was actually kind of airtight, in a deeply disturbing way. At the moment of death, he reasoned, the soul leaves the body. If the soul has weight, the body should become measurably lighter the instant it departs. All he had to do was find patients who were close enough to death that he could get them onto the scale, wait, and watch the numbers. The fact that he actually pulled this off is somehow the craziest part of the whole story. MacDougall spent years designing his apparatus. He built a special frame bed, essentially a cot mounted on a very sensitive industrial beam scale, the kind used to weigh freight. It could detect changes as small as 1/5 of an ounce. He set it up at the Grove Hall Tuberculosis home in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and he started waiting. Tuberculosis was perfect for his purposes, grim as that sounds, because TB patients in the final stage declined very slowly and very predictably. MacDougall could identify patients who were hours from death, get them moved onto the scale, and monitor them continuously. His first patient died on April 10, 1901. MacDougall and his team watched the scale readout obsessively as the man's breathing slowed. He noted the patient's weight throughout the dying process, factoring in things like moisture lost through breath, sweat evaporating off the skin, and then, at the exact moment of death, the scale dropped 3/4 of an ounce, just like that, instantaneously. MacDougall was electrified. He wrote in his notes, and I'm paraphrasing here, "We saw no reason to doubt the soul had just departed the body." He ran the experiment 5 more times over the next several years. And here's where things get messier. Patient 2. The scale didn't drop cleanly at death. It dropped slightly, then dropped more a few minutes later. MacDougall wasn't sure what to make of that. Patient 3. The scale rose at death, went up. He had no explanation. Patients 4 and 5. The data was compromised because the patients died before the scale could be properly zeroed. Unusable. Patient 6. A small drop at death, but MacDougall himself admitted the measurement was uncertain. So, out of 6 patients, he had one clear, clean result. 1. And that one result, 3/4 of an ounce, or about 21 grams, became the number he published. In March 1907, MacDougall published his findings through the American Society for Psychical Research in American Medicine under the gloriously straight-faced title, Hypothesis Concerning Soul Substance, together with experimental evidence of the existence of such substance. The New York Times picked it up immediately. The headline, "Soul Has Weight, Physician Thinks." The public absolutely lost it. People were fascinated. This was exactly the kind of story that hits the sweet spot between science and religion. A doctor, a scale, a number, 21 grams. It sounded so official, so precise. Surely, if a doctor measured it, it must be real. Ministers cited it in sermons. Newspapers ran it around the world. It was the viral moment of 1907, but the scientific community? Not impressed. The criticism was immediate, and it was brutal. Dr. Augustus P. Clark, a respected physician and MacDougall's primary scientific critic, tore the study apart in a published response. His main point, MacDougall hadn't accounted for a basic biological fact. At the moment of death, the body stops regulating temperature. To compensate, the lungs would suddenly push out a large burst of warm, moist air. Air that has weight. That alone could explain the apparent drop on the scale, with 0 souls required. Other scientists piled on. The sample size was 6, with only 1 clean result. You can't build a scientific conclusion on 1 data point. The scale itself, while sensitive, wasn't remotely controlled for environmental factors. And crucially, the experiment was never successfully replicated by anyone. Modern science writers like Mary Roach, in her book Spook, and science communicator Carl Kruselnicki have extensively debunked the methodology, pointing out that MacDougall's work falls far short of proper scientific standards. MacDougall himself tried to extend his work. He later attempted to photograph the soul leaving the body using X-rays, which also didn't work, and also raised fresh ethical questions we probably don't have time to fully unpack. The scientific consensus landed hard. The experiment was poorly designed, the data was cherry-picked, and the conclusion was worthless. MacDougall died in 1920, still believing he had been right. Here's the thing. The 21 grams idea never actually died. In 2003, director Alejandro González Iñárritu made the movie 21 Grams starring Sean Penn, Naomi Watts, and Benicio del Toro, using MacDougall's experiment as its entire premise. The number has appeared in songs, books, documentaries, and podcasts for over a century. It's even become connected to discussions about near-death experiences and parapsychology research. Most people who've heard the soul weighs 21 grams have absolutely no idea it came from a single, deeply flawed experiment on 6 dying patients in a Massachusetts tuberculosis ward. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. It's not really about whether souls have weight, it's about how desperately humans want an answer to that question. MacDougall gave people a number, a clean, specific, scientific-sounding number, and they ran with it for 100 years, because the alternative is sitting with the uncertainty. We want the universe to be measurable. We want the mystery to have an answer we can hold in our hands, even if that answer is 3/4 of an ounce. Duncan MacDougall was not a fraud. He genuinely believed what he was doing, but he also let what he wanted to be true shape what he reported as true. And that's a trap that trips up way smarter people than him, all the time. Even today, the soul may or may not weigh 21 grams. Science can't tell you that, but it can tell you that if you're going to make that claim, you're going to need more than 1 clean data point and 5 broken experiments. If you found this as wild as I did, hit subscribe. We do this every week, and drop in the comments. Do you think the soul has weight? I genuinely want to know. See you next time.